They tortured a human girl, so Earth deployed secret super soldiers in the year 2187. Humanity stood on the edge of greatness. Earth, having expanded its reach into the stars, was part of an intergalactic alliance that spanned dozens of planets. For centuries, humans had fought and clawed their way to the top of the galactic hierarchy, earning respect from both allies and enemies. The people of Earth had built vast cities, advanced technologies, and peaceful relationships with other species. But beneath the surface of this tranquility, danger lurked. It all started with an unexpected raid. The Zithari, a savage alien race known for their ruthlessness and advanced technology, launched an unprovoked assault on Earth's outer colonies. They didn't just want to conquer or destroy, they wanted to break humanity's spirit. For the Zithari, this was personal. They had long hated humanity, seeing Earth's rapid rise as a threat to their dominance in the galaxy. One day, while humanity's military was still recovering from a series of alien raids, the Zithari struck. Their fleet was vast and their tactics were brutal. No one saw it coming. Earth's defense systems were overwhelmed within hours, and the Zithari descended upon the nearest colony like a storm. There was no mercy, no quarter. Lila Kaur, a 16-year-old girl, was caught in the chaos. She was the daughter of Dr. Kaur, one of Earth's leading scientists. Dr. Kaur had been working on an incredibly secretive project for years, a top-secret super-soldier program that could change the course of the war against the Zithari. He had kept his research hidden, knowing that if the Zithari ever learned of it, they would stop at nothing to steal it. But the Zithari didn't know about the project. What they knew was that Lila was a valuable hostage. They had their own reasons for abducting her. The Zithari's leader, Commander Varn, believed that if they could break the spirit of the human people, they would be much easier to conquer. And breaking Lila was the perfect way to start. Lila was no warrior. She was just a teenager with no combat training. But she was sharp, brilliant, even. Her father had taught her many things about science and technology. She could understand advanced equations and systems, and she could help design machines. This made her valuable to the Zithari, but also dangerous. If she knew too much, it could lead them to something they didn't want to find, the Genesis Project. The Zithari didn't waste time. Lila was captured in the chaos of the attack, and within hours she found herself aboard the Zithari's flagship, locked in a cold, sterile cell. The walls were lined with alien technology, and the air was thick with a strange, metallic scent. The ship was enormous, a dark and intimidating structure in the shape of a jagged mountain. Inside, everything felt alien, hostile, but the worst part wasn't the surroundings. It was the fear. Lila had been torn from everything she knew, her home, her family, her friends, everything she loved. And now she was at the mercy of an enemy who didn't care about her age or her innocence. To them, she was nothing more than a tool to break the will of her people. The first days of her captivity were filled with pain. The Zithari didn't take kindly to defiance. Lila was interrogated relentlessly. They demanded to know everything about her father's work. They wanted the secret of the Genesis Project, the enhanced super soldiers who could turn the tide of war. They were convinced that Lila knew something, but she kept silent. Even when they threatened her life, even when they brought her to the edge of her endurance, she refused to speak. But it wasn't just physical torture. The Zithari played psychological games, trying to break her from the inside. They told her that her planet would fall, that her people were doomed. They promised her that she would watch everything she loved burn to the ground, and there would be nothing she could do to stop it. But through it all, Lila remained defiant. She didn't let them see her fear, though it gnawed at her constantly. She had to stay strong for her family, for Earth. In the quiet moments between interrogations, Lila would think about her father. He had always told her that the world would be a better place one day, that humanity would build a peaceful future among the stars. But that dream felt so distant now. She couldn't even help her father. She didn't know how long she could endure this, but she knew one thing. She had to survive. And then, on the fifth day, something unexpected happened. The Zithari commander, Varn, came to visit her. He was a towering figure, covered in dark, jagged armor with eyes that glowed a fierce red. His presence filled the room, and the air seemed to crackle with an oppressive energy. "You are strong, human," he said in a low, gravelly voice. "Stronger than I expected. But I will break you. No one can resist us forever." Lila didn't respond. She couldn't. She was too weak from the endless torture. But there was something inside her, something that refused to give in. She would not give him the satisfaction of seeing her broken. She stared at him, her eyes full of hatred, and though she couldn't speak, she silently cursed him and his people. Varn seemed to enjoy the silence. He studied her for a moment before speaking again. "Do you know why we're doing this, little girl? Do you know why we torture you? It's not just because you are important to your people. It's because we want to make your people understand one thing. There is no place for you in the galaxy. The Zithari rule and everyone else must kneel." Lila's heart pounded. She wanted to scream, to fight back, but her voice was gone. Instead, she clenched her fists and thought about her father's work. The Genesis Project. The Zithari had no idea what they were up against. They had no idea about the super soldiers humanity had been secretly developing. They had no idea that their arrogance and cruelty would soon lead them to their downfall. In the next room, the Earth government was already preparing their response. They had seen what the Zithari were capable of, and they knew they had to act quickly. Earth's leaders had kept a deadly secret hidden for years, the Genesis Project. A group of soldiers had been created in complete secrecy, genetically enhanced and trained for one purpose: to protect humanity at all costs. Now that moment had arrived. The Genesis soldiers, highly trained and genetically superior, would soon be unleashed. They were humanity's final hope, and they would stop at nothing to rescue Lila and ensure the survival of Earth. But the world was watching. Time was running out, and the Zithari were not going to stop until they broke her. As Lila remained trapped aboard the Zithari flagship, Earth's leaders knew they had only one option left. The Zithari had pushed humanity to the brink, and if they could break Lila, the psychological blow to humanity would be devastating. But Lila was stronger than they expected, and her defiance had sparked something deep within the human spirit, a fire that would not be easily extinguished. Far from the front lines, deep within the heart of Earth's military complex, something extraordinary was unfolding. It was a secret project that had been kept hidden for years, away from the eyes of the galaxy. A project so classified that only a few high-ranking officials knew it existed. It was humanity's final line of defense, the Genesis Project. The Genesis Project had been initiated years earlier, after humanity's first few encounters with alien species that far outmatched them. The project's goal was to create super soldiers, enhanced beyond human limitations in strength, speed, intelligence, and endurance. They would be humanity's answer to any threat, but the project had always remained a secret, known only to a select few. Earth's government feared the consequences if the Zithari or any other hostile species discovered the program, and so the Genesis soldiers had been kept in hiding. In a vast, underground facility beneath the surface of Earth, the soldiers of the Genesis Project were activated. These soldiers, unlike ordinary humans, had been genetically enhanced from birth. Their bodies were stronger, faster, and more durable than any human could ever hope to be. Their minds were sharper, able to process complex data and make decisions in split seconds. They had been trained for one purpose: to defend Earth at all costs. Soldier 1 was their leader, a towering figure of strength and intellect. His training had been the most rigorous, and his mind was a weapon in itself. He was not just a soldier. He was a strategist, a tactician, and a leader who understood the value of teamwork. Soldier 1 and his team had been raised from childhood in the most intense training environments possible, prepared for any situation. Now, with the Zithari threat looming, they were ready. The orders came down from the highest levels of command. Deploy the Genesis soldiers. Go to the Zithari flagship. Rescue Lila Core and eliminate the Zithari threat. Soldier 1 and his team suited up in their specialized armor, which enhanced their already formidable abilities. Each soldier was equipped with advanced weapons and high-tech communication gear, allowing them to operate in complete coordination with one another. They were the best humanity had to offer, the last hope. As they prepared for their mission, the leaders of Earth's military discussed their strategy. They knew they could not afford to make any mistakes. The Zithari were relentless, and their fleet was vast. But the Genesis soldiers were faster, smarter, and more deadly. They had the element of surprise on their side. Soldier 1, you and your team will infiltrate the Zithari flagship, the mission commander said. Your primary objective is to rescue Lila Core. Secondary objective, destroy the Zithari's main communications array to cripple their operations. We can't risk the Zithari sending reinforcements if things go wrong. Soldier 1 nodded, his face a mask of determination. He had seen the darkness of war before, but this mission was different. This was personal. Lila Core, the girl whose resilience had inspired Earth's leaders to activate the Genesis project, was in the hands of the enemy. Her safety was their top priority. As the soldiers boarded their ships and prepared to leave Earth's atmosphere, Soldier 1 addressed his team. We've been through countless simulations, but this is real. These Zithari don't know what's coming. We're going to show them what humanity is capable of. Stay sharp, stay focused, and remember why we're doing this. The mission was set in motion, and the Genesis soldiers began their journey into the heart of enemy territory. Meanwhile, aboard the Zithari flagship, Lila's situation grew more desperate by the day. The tortures she had endured were relentless, but she refused to give in. Her body ached, her mind was exhausted, but her spirit remained unbroken. She kept her thoughts focused on her father and on the Genesis project. She knew that if she could hold on long enough, help would come. She just had to survive. In the darkness of her cell, Lila often wondered how long she could last. The Zithari had brought her to the brink, but her refusal to speak about the Genesis project had made them more determined. The alien commander, Varn, had visited her several times, each encounter more brutal than the last. But each time she had resisted. You are a stubborn little human, Varn had sneered during one of his visits. But it will do you no good. You will break eventually. Everyone does. Lila hadn't responded. There was nothing to say. The more Varn tried to break her, the more her resolve hardened. She had no idea when or how, but she knew Earth wouldn't leave her behind. They would come for her. They had to. Back in Earth's military command center, the Genesis soldiers were nearing the Zithari flagship. Their ships, designed for stealth and speed, cut through space like shadows. The soldiers moved silently, their every move calculated to avoid detection. They knew that the Zithari were watching for any sign of an attack, but the Genesis soldiers had been trained for situations like this. We're almost there, Soldier 1 said, his voice calm and steady over the comms. Remember, our primary objective is Lila. If we can disable their communications array before they realize we're here, it will buy us some time. The soldiers nodded, understanding the importance of the mission. They were close now, so close that the massive silhouette of the Zithari flagship loomed in the distance. It was a monstrous vessel, dark and foreboding, with hundreds of smaller ships surrounding it like a protective swarm. It was the heart of the Zithari fleet, and getting inside would be no easy task. As the Genesis soldiers prepared to breach the flagship's outer defenses, they were met with unexpected resistance. The Zithari had more security than they anticipated. The flagship was a fortress, and getting through its shields would require precision and skill. But the Genesis soldiers were up to the challenge. "Prepare for entry," Soldier 1 ordered. "Stay in formation. We breach on my mark." The soldiers gathered their weapons, ready for the fight ahead. They knew they had to act quickly. Lila was depending on them and they wouldn't fail her. At the same time, Lila was in the depths of the flagship, unaware of the soldiers approaching. She had endured another round of interrogation, and her body was close to giving up, but her mind refused to surrender. The fear that once gripped her had faded. Now there was only the desire to survive, to escape, to fight back. Suddenly, she heard something. The sounds of footsteps, muffled but distinct. A small glimmer of hope sparked within her. She wasn't alone anymore. Someone was coming. And then the door to her cell exploded open and in rushed a figure. A human soldier wearing dark armor that blended with the shadows. It was Soldier 1. "Come with me if you want to live," he said, his voice low but filled with authority. Lila didn't hesitate. She stumbled to her feet, her body weak but her resolve stronger than ever. The soldiers had come. In the darkness of the Zithari flagship, the battle for Lila's life had begun. The cold metallic air inside the Zithari flagship felt oppressive as Lila, still weak from the constant torment, followed Soldier 1 through the dimly lit corridors. Her heart pounded in her chest. The sound of her footsteps echoed in the silence, but she wasn't alone anymore. Her mind raced, trying to make sense of everything that had happened. Lila had spent days locked in that cell, wondering if anyone would come to rescue her. But now, standing beside a real human soldier, her doubts faded away. The moment Soldier 1 had appeared and ordered her to follow, everything she had suffered, every hour of pain, every moment of fear, seemed to have been worth it. The soldiers had come. They had finally come. Soldier 1 moved with military precision, his eyes scanning every corner, his senses alert for any sign of danger. His armor, black and sleek, blended seamlessly with the darkness of the ship, and his every movement was deliberate. He was a living weapon, created for this moment. "Stay close," Soldier 1 whispered. "We need to move fast." Lila nodded, though her body still ached with the aftereffects of the torture. She had barely any strength left, but she couldn't afford to slow down now. She had to keep moving, had to escape. The thought of getting back to Earth, of seeing her father again, kept her going. But there was no time for dreams. They were still deep inside enemy territory, and every step they took was fraught with danger. As they moved down the corridor, the sound of distant footsteps reached their ears. Lila's breath caught in her throat. The Zithari were patrolling the ship, and if they were caught, everything would be for nothing. Soldier 1 held up a hand, signaling for her to stop. He paused for a moment, listening carefully. The patrol was getting closer. In a smooth motion, Soldier 1 pressed a button on his wrist, and the walls of the corridor shimmered briefly. It was a cloaking device, an advanced technology that made them nearly invisible to the Zithari sensors. The two of them stood motionless, barely daring to breathe as the patrol passed. Lila's eyes widened in awe. She had never seen anything like it. She had heard rumors of humanity's advanced technology, but this was something beyond anything she had imagined. The cloaking technology allowed them to blend into the surroundings so seamlessly that even the Zithari, with all their power and intelligence, wouldn't be able to detect them. It was one of the many secrets of the Genesis soldiers, and it was now her lifeline. Once the patrol was out of sight, Soldier 1 gestured for her to move forward. "Keep quiet and stay low." Lila followed, her mind racing with thoughts of what was happening. The Genesis soldiers, humanity's last hope, had come for her. She had no idea how they had located her so quickly, but she was grateful. They had risked everything to save her, and now she would help them in any way she could. As they made their way deeper into the flagship, the ship's layout became more confusing. The corridors twisted and turned, and the faint hum of machinery vibrated in the walls. Lila had never seen anything like it. The ship was ancient and massive, with alien symbols etched into the walls, glowing faintly. The technology seemed to pulse with life, as though the ship itself was alive. "This ship is huge," Lila said, her voice barely a whisper. "It's their command center," Soldier 1 replied. "The heart of their operations. We need to get to the central control room." Lila nodded. If they could reach the control room, they might be able to shut down the Zithari's fleet communications and cripple their efforts to stop the human resistance. But it wouldn't be easy. The Zithari would be on high alert by now, searching for any sign of the intruders. Suddenly, the sound of alarms blared across the ship, followed by a voice over the intercom. "Intruders detected. All units report to Central Command." Lila froze. The Zithari had found out they were here. The quiet moments of their escape were over. Now it was a race against time. "We have to move faster," Soldier 1 said, his voice calm despite the urgency in the air. He grabbed Lila's arm gently but firmly, pulling her along as they sprinted through the corridors. The ship seemed to come alive with activity as the Zithari began mobilizing their forces. Lila could hear the sound of footsteps and the mechanical whirring of doors opening as the enemy prepared to counterattack. She was terrified, but Soldier 1's presence was a constant reassurance. He was a soldier, an unstoppable force, and with him she felt she could do anything. After what felt like an eternity, they reached an elevator at the end of a long hallway. Soldier 1 punched in a series of codes on the keypad, and the elevator doors slid open. He pushed Lila inside before stepping in after her, and the doors closed behind them. "We're almost there," Soldier 1 said, his voice steady. Lila nodded, her heart racing. She wanted to ask what came next, but she didn't have the strength for words. Her mind was focused solely on survival. If they could make it to the control room, they could strike a blow to the Zithari that would change the course of the war. The elevator began to rise, taking them higher into the ship. Lila felt a sense of unease grow inside her, the weight of what was to come pressing down on her. What would they find when they reached the top? The Zithari were formidable enemies. What if the Genesis soldiers weren't enough? But then the elevator came to a stop with a soft chime, and the doors slid open. Soldier 1 stepped out first, his weapon raised and ready. Lila followed close behind, her legs still shaky but determined. They were in a large, circular room. The walls were lined with glowing panels, each displaying data that Lila couldn't fully comprehend. It was the heart of the ship. This was where the Zithari controlled everything. At the center of the room stood a massive console, its surface covered with alien symbols. Soldier 1 moved toward it, his eyes scanning the display. "We need to disable their communications array," he said. "If we don't, the rest of the fleet will know we're here." Lila nodded and stepped forward, her mind racing. She had seen similar technology before in her father's lab. The layout of the console was strange, but she recognized the patterns. She could help. "I think I can do it," Lila said, stepping up to the console. She worked quickly, her fingers flying over the keys, her mind fully focused on the task. Her father had taught her how to work with alien technology, how to understand it, how to manipulate it. Now, it was time to use that knowledge to save Earth. As she worked, the sound of footsteps grew louder and Lila's heart skipped a beat. The Zithari were closing in. "They're almost here," Soldier 1 said, keeping a lookout. "Hurry." Lila's hands moved faster, her mind racing through every calculation, every connection, until, finally, the system beeped and the communication panels flickered to black. The ship's control system went dark. "Done," Lila said, breathing a sigh of relief. "We're not done yet," Soldier 1 replied, his voice grim. "We need to leave now." Before they could even make it to the door, the sound of more Zithari soldiers filled the room. The battle was about to begin, the room filled with the unmistakable sound of boots thudding against the floor. Lila's heart skipped a beat. She could feel the weight of the moment pressing on her, the fear creeping back into her mind. She had disabled the Zithari's communications array, but it was only a temporary victory. The enemy was closing in. Soldier One's hand was on his weapon, his eyes scanning the doorway, waiting. His voice was calm but firm. "Stay close. We don't have much time." Lila nodded. Her mind raced. She had been through so much already, and she knew they couldn't afford to make any mistakes now. The Genesis soldiers were humanity's best hope, and she was their key to winning this war. But there was still so much to do. The Zithari would not let them escape easily. As the door to the control room creaked open, a group of heavily armed Zithari soldiers stormed in, their eyes glowing red with fury. They were massive, their armor reflecting the dim light of the room. Their leader, Commander Varn, stepped forward, his gaze fixed on Lila. "You think you've won?" Varn sneered. "You've only delayed the inevitable. You're far too weak to stop us." Lila felt a surge of defiance rise within her. She wasn't afraid of him anymore. She had seen what humanity was capable of. She had seen it in Soldier One, in the Genesis soldiers, and herself. She wasn't weak, and neither was Earth. "We've come too far to stop now," she said, her voice steady. "You won't break us. You'll never break us." Varn's lips curled into a malicious smile. "We'll see about that." Before he could give the order to attack, Soldier One moved. Faster than Lila could follow, he raised his weapon and fired. The first Zithari soldier crumpled to the floor, but more were coming, rushing into the room to engage. The battle was on. Soldier One's movements were a blur, a combination of precision and strength. He took down Zithari after Zithari with deadly efficiency. Lila watched in awe as the Genesis soldier fought, his every action a testament to the power of human ingenuity and determination. They weren't just fighting for survival, they were fighting for the future of their species. But as the fight raged on, more and more Zithari poured into the room. Lila knew they couldn't keep this up forever. They needed a plan, a way out. She looked around frantically, her mind racing. Then she saw it, a control panel on the far side of the room near the door. "I can help," Lila shouted to Soldier One, her voice cutting through the chaos. "I can hack into their security system. I can open the doors and get us out of here." Soldier One didn't hesitate. "Do it. We'll cover you." Lila didn't waste another second. She dashed for the control panel, her hands trembling but determined. The room was chaotic, filled with the sounds of gunfire, explosions, and the screams of fallen Zithari. But she didn't let herself be distracted. This was it. This was their chance to escape. She quickly accessed the panel, her fingers flying across the keys. The Zithari's system was complex, but she had learned enough during her time on the flagship to understand their technology. She knew how to manipulate it, how to use it against them. "I'm in," she said, her voice tight with concentration. "Just a few more seconds." The door to the control room was locked down, and the Zithari had set up barriers to prevent anyone from escaping. But Lila was determined to break through. She had come this far. There was no turning back. Suddenly, a sharp pain shot through her arm. She gasped, looking down to see a Zithari soldier standing just behind her, his weapon aimed at her. Her heart stopped, but before she could react, Soldier One was there, his weapon raised. The Zithari soldier crumpled to the ground in a heap. "You're not alone," Soldier One said, his voice calm as ever. Lila's breath came in shallow gasps, but she didn't let the fear slow her down. She refocused on the control panel. One last input and the door began to open. It was a small victory, but it was enough. The Zithari commander roared in fury. "No, you will not escape." Lila didn't look back. "We're not finished yet." The door opened wide, revealing the darkened corridor outside. Soldier One gestured for Lila to move quickly, and she followed him, her legs still weak but her resolve stronger than ever. The battle was far from over, but they had a chance. That was all they needed. As they ran down the hallway, Lila's mind raced with thoughts of their next move. They still had to make it off the ship, and the Zithari were far from finished. The flagship was a massive, heavily guarded structure, and there were countless dangers between them and safety. But Lila didn't care. She had survived too much to let it end here. She had faith in Soldier One and the Genesis soldiers. Together, they would make it out. Together, they would take down the Zithari. They turned a corner and suddenly, Lila stumbled. Her legs buckled beneath her and she fell to the ground with a painful thud. Soldier One stopped and quickly helped her back to her feet. "You all right?" he asked, concern in his voice. "I'm fine," Lila said, shaking her head. "Just a little tired." "Keep moving," Soldier One urged. "We're almost there." As they continued down the corridor, Lila felt a surge of energy. The thought of Earth, of her father, of all the people who were depending on her, gave her strength. She couldn't stop now. She wouldn't stop. At the end of the hallway, they reached an escape pod. The hatch was already open, ready for them to board. But just as they were about to step inside, the sound of footsteps echoed from behind them. More Zithari soldiers. Lila's heart raced, but Soldier One was calm as ever. He stepped in front of her, raising his weapon. "I'll hold them off. Get in." Lila hesitated for a moment, but then nodded. This was their only chance. She climbed into the pod and sat down, her hands gripping the sides as she watched Soldier One take his position. He fired his weapon at the advancing Zithari, taking down several soldiers in quick succession. "Go!" Soldier One shouted. Lila hit the button to launch the pod, and the hatch slammed shut just as the pod shot away from the flagship. They were free. As the pod hurtled through space, Lila leaned back in her seat, her body still trembling from the events of the past few hours. She looked at Soldier One, who was now sitting beside her, his face showing the slightest hint of a smile. "You did it," he said. "No," Lila replied, her voice steady. "We did it. Earth did it. Humanity did it." The Zithari flagship faded into the distance as they made their way back to Earth. The battle was over for now, but Lila knew this was only the beginning. Humanity had proven that, no matter the odds, they would always fight, always survive. And with the Genesis soldiers by their side, humanity would stand strong, no matter what the future held.